All right, hello everyone. It is now 8 o'clock, so we're just going to get rolling here. I hope you like my sign. Figured it was better to start the hangout early and let people join, and then I can just come in when I was ready. So hey, I hope everyone had a great hump day and you've had a great week so far. First, I want to say hi to anyone that's watching for the first time. Just so you know, I do have the Q&A app turned on. Let me actually double check to make sure I have it on before I say that. Yes, the Q&A app is turned on. So what that'll mean is you can ask me questions on the right-hand side. There is a slight delay between when you ask the question and when they show up for me. If by chance I don't see your question, it's possible that you asked it and it didn't pop up for me before I ended the call. But anyone that asks me questions, I'll make sure I get to them in a timely fashion. So let's see. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to mention is that if you have any device that counts your steps, anything like that, like a Fitbit watch or device, sometimes phones support them with the latest versions of the operating system. There's an ongoing challenge on matchup.io. Let me double check to make sure that's the right address. Yes, matchup.io. If you friend me, my username there is Chuck Gross, and I'll invite you to the ongoing challenge for steps. It's based on the number of steps in a month, and you can only go month to month. So the current challenge will run through the remainder of August, and then I'll set up another one for September. And it's capped at 20 people. So if you have a device that matchup.io supports, please friend me, and I'll continue to invite you to challenges. If we run into the problem where we have more than 20 people wanting to join, I'll figure something out, split up the challenges, whatever. We'll go from there. Basically, the way it works is that if you have a iOS device, you have to get an app and you sync on the app and it'll pull in your steps from whatever else you have. I have a Fitbit. If you have Android, they're working on an Android app now, but they don't have one currently. You can visit the website in the browser with Android and you can sync your steps that way. So that way it allows all of us to kind of have different devices like Jawbone and MyFitnessPal, what's the other one? Body Media, that type of stuff, and all have one place to have the contest for steps, because if we all just use Fitbit, then people that didn't have a Fitbit would be excluded. So I didn't want to do that. All right. So far, there's only one topic that's been pre-submitted. So like I mentioned, the Q&A portion of the app is turned on. So please submit any questions that you do have. Otherwise, it'll be a pretty short hangout. But that's okay. Not every hangout has to be really long, because some have been like an hour, some have been 15 minutes, and that's both okay. So this topic has come up quite a few times recently, and I felt that I could answer it best in a longer form via the hangout. I know that if some of you are writing to me, sometimes the answer is really long, and it can kind of be better to hear the answer than to actually read it, and you can hear it in my voice. So what I've noticed is that some people, when they switch from eating their standard American diet, which is lots of fast food and or high in processed carbs and junk food, when they switch to something that's high in vegetables, fruits, fiber, and lean protein sources, they find they're actually incredibly full and that they cannot get anywhere near their calorie goals for a given day. So in general, a single day means very little in the context of your entire journey. However, this holds true for both situations, meaning if you have a day where you have too many calories, it doesn't really matter that much. In the end, it kind of evens out. So the one thing I want to say before I go any further is I don't want you to force feed yourself and stuff your face when you already feel full. That's not a good thing either. The whole point of this is to create habits that are leading to a more well-balanced and your well-being and long-term health, and force feeding yourself when you're not hungry is not the way to go about that. That's not a habit we want to adopt. So if you haven't met your protein goal at the end of the day, and your protein goal is like 150 grams of protein, and you didn't eat any protein all day, it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to eat 150 grams of protein in one meal. So in that case, it's one day, move on, learn from the experience, and try again tomorrow. It's not worth worrying about, but it is worth learning from. So with that said, if this describes you and you're finding that you're starting to feel incredibly full and you're short of your calorie goals on a regular basis, I think it's time to change things up a little bit. Before I go into the specifics of how we would do that, I want to briefly go over the why we would do that. Many people would probably think, oh, well, I can just not take in as many calories, and I'll just lower and lower and lower my calories, and that will help me lose fat faster. Unfortunately, this is not necessarily always going to be the case. If you consistently starve yourself, like being drastically under your calorie goal would be starving yourself, the scale may change downward, but this isn't a great idea. You could be trading in your long-term health. You could be losing muscle instead of fat. You could be slowing down your observable progress, meaning the scale will stop moving. The lower you keep going lower and lower and lower in calories and upping and upping and upping the exercise, you could stop the scale from moving downward. In fact, you could make it move upward. You could make your measurements increase. You could be bloated. You could be retaining water as a result. Then this will make it seem like you're not losing fat at all. Eating fewer calories than what's required to maintain your current weight is a stress on your body. Too much stress, and you are going to possibly severely and negatively impact your body's hormonal balance, which can result in all those things that I mentioned, retaining water, bloating, and just feeling awful in general. We basically want to have fat loss be just outside the edge of your comfort zone. So it's not going to be the same as feeling full all the time and eating whatever the hell you want and loving every single food choice as if it were a birthday cake. That's a fantasy. It's right outside your comfort zone, but it's so close to the comfort zone that it's barely noticeable. So you should not be ravenous and obsessed with food the entire time. There's plenty of reasons as to why you wouldn't want to basically tank your metabolism. So the concern that I have primarily is if you plateau for a long period of time and you're already at low calories, there's nothing to take away from because the intake is so low. So what we would do in that case is we would then have you eat more calories and be okay with temporary weight gain to get your metabolism back to the point where you're not totally tanked out and having to basically eat almost nothing to continue to lose fat. That's not a situation you want to be in. You want to be eating close to that line of this is the most I can physically eat and still lose weight. You want to be towing that line constantly. And as you lose weight, that line may lower, meaning as you have a smaller body, you require less calories as a consequence of that, but you basically want to be towing that line as much as possible. So it does take a long-term view to be able to appreciate and move away from the mentality of doing more always equals more results. So this is certainly not true, especially when it comes to fitness. For many people, this is a vicious cycle. So exercising multiple hours a day and starving yourself, that's not actually going to speed the process up, but it can do the opposite. It can slow you down, make you miserable, and in the end, it's not sustainable. Usually what happens is people go all in. They go from sitting on the couch and eating junk food to eating nothing but chicken breast and broccoli and exercising 3 to 4 hours a day. And then once that's not sustainable, because I don't know anyone that could do that for the length of time it would take to reach whatever your goal is, and then not want to just eat a bunch of crap because you've been depriving yourself of it. That's the way to an eating disorder. So that's not something that's going to be sustainable for the long term. The way you're losing fat should be the way you plan to maintain that fat loss. So ask yourself a question: is what I'm doing right now to lose weight, to lose fat, is this doable once I'm done doing that? Because this is what you're going to have to do to maintain that. You may be able to ease up a little bit and maybe lower your protein significantly because you won't be in a calorie deficit. Your calories will be a little bit higher and you'll have a lot more wiggle room for food choices. However, the habits in general are going to be the same. So if you can't sustain them permanently, then the weight loss is not going to be permanent either. And that's why I always talk about sustainable and being okay with slow progress, because you need time for those habits to be cemented in there. If you get to the end really quick, the habits aren't going to be in place and you'll backslide immediately. Basically, you can't just go from I'm on a diet and then say I'm off a diet. You can't be on or off. That mentality is not going to work. So like I said, progress does happen slightly beyond your comfort zone, and you shouldn't be suffering or in agony to see progress. The idea is that we can get used to a little tiny bit of discomfort, and it should be something that is so minuscule that it becomes something that's in the background. It should not be the focus of our life. Fitness should not be your life unless you are a fitness coach or a personal trainer, because then that's that's your job. But fitness should enhance the remainder of your life. It should make everything you want to do in your life easier to do and should give you more energy to do it. So while I fully believe that becoming invested and passionate about the process of fitness, instead of focusing on the end goal, like I want to weigh this, you have to focus on the process itself. Focusing on that process is vital to long-term success. But you have to remember that the process itself never ends. That's why I was saying earlier that the process itself is what you're going to have to do to maintain your weight loss with a little bit looser restrictions. So it's going to be something you have to do constantly to maintain. Now, unless you're an athlete or something, it should be a background process. But if like I was saying, if your job is fitness, so like an athlete, it is something you're going to have to focus on. But that's a different scenario. I don't think we have anyone that I work with that kind of fits into that mold. So moving on to the how. So let's say you're consistently 500 calories under your calorie goal. I would recommend that you try to split up your meals. Let me start over. If you're consistently 500 under your calorie goals as a consequence or a result of being too full all the time, and you're still not able to meet your protein goal, I would recommend eating more meals and making them a little bit smaller. So that way you're kind of spreading out your eating. Now, I've noticed that a few of the people that mentioned that they are always full don't eat breakfast. Now, this may be a good time to start. Not everyone needs to eat breakfast. But if you find that you're simply too full from eating so much food and lots of vegetables and fruit and fiber and lean protein sources, then you probably should be eating breakfast because you need to kind of split those calories and protein and fiber up across the day so that it's not filling you up so much. So remember, there is a slight adaptation period. People report that they feel nauseous when they have breakfast and it just makes them feel sluggish. Over time, that will go away. It just requires going through the adaptation period. Over time, you'll find you can eat more whole foods. And then as a result, you will then have more energy. The end goal here with this process is that you'll be able to properly fuel your body and mind toward what you do every day. And additionally, if you find an exercise you love, you'll be able to do it better, faster, more efficiently, stronger, and you'll get leaner in the process. Like I said, breakfast isn't for everybody. I currently am not eating breakfast. I'm still trying to slim down a little bit. I just end up skipping breakfast, eating a moderate sized lunch, and then eating the bulk of my calories after weight training in the evening. And that's what works for me. But like I said, I have no problem eating 75 to 100 plus grams of protein in a single meal. It doesn't bother me. But that's just a consequence of, I used to have a voracious appetite at 400 pounds. I could probably be a competitive eater right now, but I value my long-term health more than anything. So I'm not going to do that. So I realize that is lots of information to take in. So if you want to discuss it further or in more detail, please let me know. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. So if you noticed, normally I would take questions that are specifically asked for the Hangout, but what I've been doing is looking for similarities between questions that people ask and looking for like a common trend that we could possibly address in general. So that's pretty much all I had for tonight. Let me kind of click around and see if anyone asked any more questions. While I'm doing that, if you have any topics you'd think of that are not specific questions, but just topics you'd like me to cover, please let me know and I will look into doing that. Alrighty, I am not seeing any questions currently asked right now. Let me check one more place because I kind of expanded our audience a little bit. Alrighty, I am not seeing any questions being asked, and that's okay. We will have the Hangout probably Wednesdays from now on. My kids are going back to school. My wife's a teacher, and so is she. So Mondays are probably going to be rough for all four of us for a little bit. And Wednesdays will kind of let us get into the swing of the week and be easier for me to actually be awake this late at night. I know it's 8 o'clock, but we're kind of the early to bed, early to rise type people. So everyone have a great night. I will talk to you soon, and I look forward to working with you and any future questions you have. All right, take care.